You do not seem to be tormented by what you did. You seem to relish following in the footsteps of the murderers you idolize. You aren't racked with guilt. You're proud of yourself. Less than a month after the tragedy, you weren't concerned with the horror you wrought.
The courtroom was already quiet when the judge leaned forward and locked eyes with the 14-year-old at the defense table. She didn't raise her voice. She said, flat and cold, "This is the moment your own words tied the noose. You wanted to be remembered. You will be. Now sit up straight and look at me while I decide whether you'll ever breathe free air again." Jaden Cole straightened in his chair. Behind him, a woman in her 70s with swollen, arthritic fingers clutched a tissue box like a life raft. His grandmother. She'd raised him alone after his mother vanished into drugs and his father went to prison for murder. She worked double shifts at a hospital laundry. Her body was breaking down, but her eyes, red, rimmed and wet, were locked on the back of the boy's head as if she could will him to turn around. He never did. The judge opened a thick file.
All right, we are all present. Never before have I had to sentence a 16-year-old. Certainly.
Right, we are all present. Never before have I had to sentence a 14-year-old.
For something someone did when they were 14 years of age. Those who appear regularly in front of me have often heard me lament about the difficulty in sending a young person to prison.
For something he did when he was 12. Those who appear regularly in front of me have heard me say how hard it is to send a young person to prison. And here the minimum is life with the possibility of parole, unless I find permanent incorrigibility.
Now, the appellate courts have said that children are constitutionally different from adults for purposes of sentencing. That stems from an understanding that juveniles aren't fully formed cognitively. Hallmark features of a juvenile include immaturity, impulsivity, recklessness, and a failure to appreciate risk and consequences. And because of these factors, the Supreme Court says that the Eighth Amendment prohibits the death penalty for juveniles. The Supreme Court also disfavors life without parole for juveniles, declaring it to be a constitutionally forbidden, disproportionate sentence in all but the rarest of cases. Life without parole is thus authorized only for youthful crimes reflecting permanent incorrigibility.
She paused, flipping pages. The appellate courts say children are constitutionally different for sentencing. Juveniles aren't fully formed. They're immature, impulsive, reckless. They don't appreciate risk and consequences. That's why the Supreme Court prohibits the death penalty for juveniles and disfavors life without parole, reserving it only for rare cases where the crime reflects permanent incorrigibility, not transient immaturity. Life without parole is barred for crimes born of youth's passing storms. She pulled out a sealed evidence bag containing a spiral notebook. But you, Jaden, you turned your passing storm into a research project. You wrote in here, and I quote, "I want to see what it's like to be the reason everyone cries." Like the shooters who get documentaries. You were 12, and you were already making a checklist. She set the notebook down and looked directly at the grandmother. "Ma'am, I'm going to read some hard things. I need you to try to stay quiet. Can you do that?" The old woman nodded, her knuckles white. The judge's voice flattened. Year-old Lily Tran lived 3 doors down. She had a speech delay and carried a stuffed bunny everywhere. You knew that. You helped her catch fireflies at the block party. On April 3rd, you told her there was a litter of kittens in the abandoned shed by the creek. You'd been watching the shed for weeks. You'd loosened a board to get in. You had rope, a roll of duct tape, and a box cutter you'd sharpened on your grandmother's kitchen stone. You brought her there and... The grandmother let out a strangled sob. The judge stopped, voice turning to ice. "Mom, I warned you. One more sound and the bailiff will escort you out. I will not repeat myself." The woman pressed her fist to her mouth. The silence swelled. "And you took 87 minutes. That's what the medical examiner wrote. You didn't rush. You later told a cellmate that you wanted to see how long it took for someone to stop being a person. That's not transient immaturity. That's a dissertation in cruelty." A juror in the gallery audibly gasped. The judge didn't acknowledge it. She continued, 3 days after the search began, you joined the volunteer grid. You wore a reflective vest and carried water bottles for the adults. You shook your head sadly when they called Lily's name. You came home, ate dinner, and told your grandmother you were tired from helping. She believed you. She kissed your forehead, and that night you wrote in your journal, "They have no idea. I'm right there, and they don't see me." You were proud. That right there is the difference between a broken child and something else entirely.
You were all too aware of the court outcome of those mass shootings because you studied and obsessed over them. You know that the Aurora Theater shooter received life without parole. Nicholas Cruz received life without parole. Ethan Crumley, a juvenile, received.
A beat of silence. The grandmother was trembling, silent tears streaming. The judge's voice softened just barely. "Mom, I see the arthritis in your hands." You worked doubles to keep him in clean clothes. You sat with him during his asthma attacks. You didn't cause this, but love can't bring Lily back, and it can't change who he chose to become.
But that failure does not absolve you from who you chose to idolize, worship, and become. 4 lives were stolen, 2 of them really just beginning, and it wasn't done out of fear or anger.
"I need you to hear that from me," the old woman whispered. "Hayes, my baby," so brokenly that the court reporter leaned forward to catch it. The judge's expression didn't flicker. He stopped being a baby when he planned a murder for 6 months, selected a victim based on vulnerability, faked concern for her family, and later bragged that he'd do it cleaner next time.
Your childhood instability and neglect would explain or mitigate finding yourself in one of those problematic places that Dr. Richards testified about. But planning, fantasizing about, visualizing, and executing a school shooting.
On a recorded jail call, he told his cousin, "When I get out, I'll pick one nobody will miss." A foster kid. The cousin laughed. He laughed. "That's who you raised, ma'am, not who you wanted to raise." She shifted to the legal findings. The Supreme Court in Montgomery said a life without parole sentence for a juvenile must reflect permanent incorrigibility, not a mistake, not a bad month, a fixed, irredeemable state. This court finds by clear and convincing evidence that Jaden Cole is permanently incorrigible. He did not act out of fear or anger. He was not bullied. He didn't know Lily beyond the block. He did it because he wanted to see what it felt like, and because he wanted notoriety. He studied other murderers. He critiqued their mistakes. He said, "I'll be the one they can't forget." She leaned forward. "You are not tormented by what you did. You are annoyed you got caught. There is no guilt here."
A youth may fail to consider the harm his rash actions inflict before acting, but you did consider it. You studied that pain when you researched the trials of your profane idols.
She picked up the gavel but didn't strike it. "Jaden Cole, I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the malice murder of Lily Tran. All other counts merge as a matter of law. You'll remain in juvenile detention until 17, then transfer to adult prison. You have 30 days to file an appeal, 30 days to move to withdraw your plea for manifest injustice, and the right to appointed counsel for that motion. You have a right to file a habeas corpus petition alleging constitutional violations. That's civil, no appointed counsel. Mr. Albright, I assume you'll explain."
Your crimes do reflect permanent incorrigibility, and I will sentence you to life without parole for each of the malice murders that you committed.
Mr. Albright stood, voice tight. "Yes, Your Honor. The defense will file an emergency notice of appeal and a motion for reconsideration based on the court's disregard of the uncontested neuroimaging evidence. We're also filing a habeas petition in federal district court before Judge Elroy, challenging the incorrigibility finding as constitutionally insufficient. This is not the end of this case. It's the beginning of the appeal that will overturn it." The judge set the gavel down. "You file what you need to file. But I'll say this clearly so the record can carry it upstairs. I did not sentence a brain scan. I sentenced a boy who sharpened a box cutter on a kitchen stone, who practiced his alibi, who smirked when the Amber Alert lit up his phone, and who wrote that he'd do it cleaner next time. The federal courts can do what they will, but Lily Tran's mother will never see her daughter's graduation. That's the weight I carry, not your motions."
You have certain post-plea appellate rights I need to inform you of. You have a right to file a notice for a discretionary appeal within 30 days of today's date. You can have a lawyer represent you for that, but you are not entitled to court-appointed counsel. You have a right to file a motion to withdraw this guilty plea because it's less than 30 days before the term of court ends. You have to file that within 30 days of today's date. That would be to correct a manifest injustice. You do have a right to a court-appointed attorney for that post-plea appellate right. If you need a court-appointed attorney, you need to promptly apply for one so that one can be appointed to meet that 30-day deadline. You also have a right to file a petition for habeas. Did this
She banged
anyway.
the gavel once. We're
You
adjourned.
wrote, I want to make history. I want people to remember the pain I caused. And there you succeeded. The pain that you visited upon this community is unlikely to disappear in my lifetime.
As the bailiff
You
led
do not
Jaden
seem to
out,
be
the grandmother reached for him with her ruined hands, calling his name like a question. He didn't turn. She collapsed into the pew alone. Mr. Albright was already on his phone. Voice clipped. Get Dr. Kessler on an emergency affidavit. We're filing the stay application with Judge Elroy within the hour. Tell the clerk it's a life or death juvenile 8th Amendment case. Move. The camera held on the empty doorway long after the sound of his footsteps faded.
We're adjourned.
With him off the bench, that camera needs to be off.